It's my privilege to introduce the third speaker for our Alien to Citizen this week. I just wanted to remind myself what I wrote down about an intro here. Right, yep. Okay, so why sci-fi? Because it's cool. It's a little bit freaky, I think. And I remember being in high school and Mr. Johnston, my English teacher, said, you will find that 99% of the readers of sci-fi are male. This is 30 years ago. And 99% of the readers of romance are female. And I thought, really? You mean there's 1% of men who read romance? Okay, this is a 15-year-old thinking here. And I could not believe that girls would not read sci-fi, but things have changed, and today's speaker is a female who loves sci-fi. And she's going to give us her download on sci-fi in a moment. But it is about, it's a little bit freaky, isn't it? And I think that in some respects, freaky can be good, but freaky can be bad. I mean, I can tell you a couple of stories of me being, freaky was bad. Chatting to a first-time guest out in the dining room after they'd just arrived, and he was a lovely young couple, and the Aboriginal man was like, he just looked like, he worked out in the gym and was just like a model. And I thought, man, and he was just saying, I really want to serve God and I want to step into church and get going. And I'm like, wow, and I started to say, you could do, there's so much you could do. You could be youth leaders if you want. You could run a home group. And then, and he was, I could see the whites of his eyes, starting to get, but I didn't take the hint. And that was the last I ever saw of them. And then there was another young lady who came in, and she'd been in our church for a little while on and off, and she was sort of feeling her way in, and then she got baptised, and then she just disappeared for a year or more, and then came back and made an appointment and said to Lil and I, she just wants to get back into church and get back and involved, and I did it again. I started saying, and she says, I want to find out what's next for me. And I said, baptism in the Holy Spirit and, speaking in tongues. And once again, you see the whites of the eyes. And I was like, yeah, I haven't seen her since. So sometimes freaky's bad. And yet, horror movies, they're like this genre that's out there and people like. Go figure, I don't get it. Some people just like a little bit of freaky. And I mean scary. I just don't get that. But the point is that when we're talking about alien versus citizen, we're talking about when you start mentioning the Holy Spirit, as I did to this young lady, it's like having someone else living inside you. That's just a little bit freaky. It's like what I said on that first week when I was talking about alien, how the alien beings sort of implanted an egg inside the person, and it just grew and then busted out, and that was the death of that person. And so you've got this whole kind of, if you're a little bit new to God stuff, Holy Spirit stuff, and you hear me say, it's a good idea to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, be filled with the Holy Spirit, and have this, because he's a person, you see, he's an entity. It's like, sounds a little bit like possession to me. How will I be in control? Will I do things that I wouldn't normally do? This is just a little bit scary. And my answer to that is, yeah, I get it. I get it. But at the same time, when you read about him, you find out that he's not scary at all. He's there for our empowering and our building and upbuilding. And so, yep. Modern illustration. I've lost it. I'm going to invite Jacqui to the stage now. She's going to take over. She looks like she wants to.
Good morning, everyone. How you going? That's good. What I was just mentioning to David there was a conversation we had earlier in the week that, the book of the law that the Israelites had that was written in Moses' time, the ancient book, had some really old examples of what everything was and how to relate to things. And then Jesus came and he told all these stories about agriculture in the language of the people of that time. They were farmers, they worked the land, so he talked about planting crops and stuff like that, and that was really relevant. So we're talking this week that this pop culture, this science fiction is the language of our time. So it may seem a bit weird, it's not what's in the Bible, but Jesus talked about weird stuff too. So that was just additional. Hello, I am Jacqui Holder. I am associate pastor here with my husband Brad, and I'm also assistant to pastors David and Lil. I've been part of this church for about 8 years. I've been part of this community for about 18 years, and I've been part of the Pilbara for about 30 odd years. I love this church, it's amazing. Thank you, Pastor David and Lil, for who you are and what you do for this church, and for all of you, because this church wouldn't be this church without all of you. The church is the body, and that is you. So if you go onto my TV and you click on Disney Plus, you will see my name is Mama Vader. I'm not Darth Vader, I'm Mama Vader. And I'm a little bit into Star Wars. I love science fiction and I love fantasy. It's these amazing action stories that are set in interesting and exciting places and spaces, like space, like Star Wars. My first memory of Star Wars was when my little brother got the box set VHSs. Do people remember VHSs? Yes. So we got the trilogy, the original trilogy, when I was, maybe 8 or 9. And it was just this whole new world that we had never encountered before. Space and traveling through the stars and aliens, and Mum and Dad were obviously excited that we were into it too. But I'm not fanatical. I don't mind Jar Jar Binks. He's fine. If you don't know who that is, that's fine. But if you do, you might be offended. I don't care what order you watch the movies in. You can watch the 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. You can watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can watch 1, 4, 5, 6, which would be my preference because I don't really like 2 and 3. And I worked out this week why that is, and that'll come out later. Star Wars Lego is my favourite Christmas present. I love building it. I don't care about displaying it, but building it is one of the most exciting things. And probably the most emotional episode of Star Wars was episode 7, which was the first of the new ones. So you had the originals, then the prequels, and now there's the sequels. Number 9 just came out. I haven't seen it yet, but there was some pretty big things that happened in that movie. Spoiler alert, Han Solo died. I cried, I went, in the middle of a gold class cinema. And I was sobbing, I was hysterical, and my husband is videoing me. And I made sure that Elma does not have that video. But the first episode, The Phantom Menace, came out when I was about 10 years old. And the central character is a kid, which when you're a kid watching is amazing. There's someone you can relate to. And so it's, for those that don't know Star Wars, it's about about a galaxy through war. Star Wars. Hey. When people work that out for the first time, they're like, wow, that's logical. And there are the Jedi Knights, which are the keepers of peace and justice in the galaxy. And they are travelling on a mission and it goes horribly wrong and they have to go and get parts on this desert planet. And they meet a little slave boy called Anakin. And Anakin is very skilled, he's very gifted. He's able to compete in pod racing, which is, have we got a photo, Elma? Yeah. So this is little Anakin in his pod racer. And this is pod racing. So it's kind of a combination between chariot racing Formula One, and Demolition Derby. Only one person made it to the end of this race out of like 30. Everyone else ended up in pieces or dead. You don't see it. It's a PG-rated movie. I watched it with Lily the other day. And so he has these amazing reflexes. He's the only human that's able to do pod racing. The rest of them are all aliens with superior to human skills in this. It's like he can see what's happening before it happens. He's also really skilled in mechanics. He can build and fix machines, like this one here. C-3PO, the gold guy, he built him to help his mum out because he and his mum were slaves and there was no dad. And so he built C-3PO to help his mum, like a good boy. And he dreamed, when the Jedis came and saw him, he told them of this dream he had of becoming a Jedi and coming back to his planet and freeing all the slaves. Through a series of events, including a high-speed pod race, some gambling, and some very unhappy people, Anakin is set free and is allowed to go with the Jedi to go and train. He's tested, and he has the highest midi-chlorian count, which is, basic terms, the thing that makes you able to sense the Force, that any of the Jedi had come across. He is scared and he misses his mum, but he's excited. So they go back on their mission and war is breaking out. There's been an invasion happen and Anakin hides where he's told to hide for once in a little starship, but then he presses buttons and ends up on autopilot in space and accidentally blows up the ship that wins the war. Yay! So they do take him before the council, because normally with Jedis, they start their training when they're very small, before they learn, the world, when they're still able to be moulded to the Jedi Code. So the Jedi Code is there is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. So peace, knowledge, serenity, harmony, and the Force. So he goes before the council and they're pretty worried because he is an emotional being already. He is fearful. And they do agree to his training, but the head of the Jedi Council, Master Yoda, we've got a picture of him. Look, you can tell he's wise, right? But he is also a kick-butt Jedi. This is Count Dooku. He's a bad guy. Obviously, red, bad, green, good. So I don't know how old Yoda is in the first movie, but by the time he passes away in the 6th movie, he's 900. So he's been through a lot, he's seen a lot. He lives by the Jedi Code. He is fruitful. He is the one that everyone comes to. Everyone knows who he is by the way he is. But he is, both gifted and fruitful in the Jedi ways. And Yoda is the most concerned about young Anakin's training because of the fear he senses in him. And Yoda knows that fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. And hate leads to suffering. And this is basically the path that little Anakin took. He was manipulative. He didn't care for the code. While he was highly gifted, he was a very talented Jedi once he became a Jedi. Well, he was a Padawan. He never got the status of Master. But he went the wrong way, and he ended up filled with hate and murder and jealousy and rage and selfish ambition. Through a battle, he ended up in lava, and the unrecognisable, or the highly recognisable, but unrecognisable to his family, Darth Vader. He is not the boy we once knew and loved. And we don't want that to happen to us. We don't want to be unrecognizable or hidden from our family, unable to be close to our God, to our brother Jesus. Little Annie started well. He had the gift. He was so gifted. You know, if we were talking in Holy Spirit terms, he'd be prophesying, he would be healing people, he'd be doing miracles all over the show. But he wasn't on the right path still. We learned last week that we've got the Holy Spirit, and that makes us the power Christians, and we've got our supernatural armor. But how do we ensure that we stay on the light side, not the dark side? And if someone saw you, would they know that you were filled with the Holy Spirit? Would it be obvious that there was something different about you? We were talking about a question this week. What do you think is more important? Is it healing, miracles, prophecy, leadership, wisdom, pastoring, encouragement, the gifts of the Holy Spirit? Or is it being kind and loving and peaceful, having self-control? The latter doesn't seem very exciting. But there's a portion in Matthew 7, that I've got two excerpts from this morning. And this one is really hard hitting. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons? And in your name perform many miracles? I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Yikes. That's scary. Being full of the spiritual gifts, being able to drive out demons, that's not something we consider ourselves on a daily basis to be able to do. It is within our power because we have the power of Jesus Christ, but it's not something we consider of ourselves. But then in the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verses 17 through 23, Paul starts listing the desires of the flesh, which are in conflict with the desires of the Holy Spirit. Stuff like sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, envy, drunkenness. And then to counter that, the other side, the Spirit, not the flesh, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience or forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. So if you're living in the fruit of the Spirit, those 9 things, there is no law against it. You can't be in the wrong if you're living in them. So Anakin is a pretty good example of that first list. He was living in the world. He was so gifted, so incredibly gifted, but he was living his way, not in the Force, not in the Jedi code, not in the light. So the word fruit in this context actually means something comes from something. So it is the result of it. The fruit of the Spirit, having the Spirit of God in you produces these things out of you. It is a result, a direct result of having the Holy Spirit inside you. And there's also some really interesting commentaries about the word fruit. It is a single and it is a plural. You can have a fruit platter or a bowl of fruit or a piece of fruit. It's the same word. But I want you to consider that while, there are 9 things listed, it's not one or the other. You can't be like, well, I'm loving, so I don't need self-control. or I'm patient, so I don't need love. These 9 things are so important to go together that, think of it like a bunch of grapes. It's many fruit, but it's one fruit. Or like an orange, you peel it and there's the segments inside. So all of these things should be produced as a result of you living with the Holy Spirit inside you. So the Holy Spirit does give us gifts, and they are flashy and they are cool and they are so important, but they cannot replace the fruit of the Spirit. It's not an act, but it's daily choosing to put God first. I did a Bible plan while I was preparing for this that Pastor David recommended to me. Elmar's got a screen when he's ready. He's just doing things right. This is the Bible plan. I highly recommend that you look at this. But it had definitions of each of the fruit, or each of the aspects of fruit. And I'd like to read them because how it was written was so great. I don't want to take away from it. So love is the selfless giving, devoted love of God and others. It's an active display and compels us to put others' needs above our own. Love honours and celebrates truth, no matter how difficult it is to hear. It gives of self even when it doesn't feel like it. Love doesn't allow feelings to dictate its choices. Love is hopeful, persevering, and trusting. Loving people keep hatred, apathy, and self-preservation far from them. Joy is a deep and enduring state of our soul that no circumstance, event, or human can steal away from us. It's delighting in God and choosing to rejoice in all things, because our circumstances don't rule us. Our mood swings are non-existent. This doesn't mean we are always in a good mood, but we can remain in an unexplainable place of contentment. Joyful people don't allow misery, sorrow, sadness, despair to rule their thoughts or guide their actions. Peace. Peace is a deep well of confidence that God is who He is, and that He will do what He says He will do. Peace comes from resting in the promises of God. It's choosing to work with others for a common goal instead of insisting on our own way. Peace is often unexplainable and incomprehensible, but we know when we have it and when we don't. Peaceful people don't go to war with their actions or words, for they know that brings no relief to any situation. Patience is exhibiting calmness during the midst of stressful situations. It's showing empathy towards others when they are not doing things to our standard. That's a tough one. Patience is produced when we support the growth in others as they are on their own journey in life. It's not getting easily disgruntled when a delay occurs that won't matter in 10 years, let alone 10 days. Patient people don't become easily annoyed, agitated, nor do they show their intolerance. Kindness is being genuinely kind to anyone and everyone. It assumes that people deserve kindness no matter their differences, viewpoints, or cultures. Kindness celebrates others and serves when there is a need. It looks out for the well-being of others and shows compassion when needed. It assists others and shows courtesy and benevolence to anyone. Kind people do not display animosity, ill will, or envy towards others. Hello? Thanks. Goodness is truly desiring to help others. It doesn't approach or entertain sin. Goodness does the right thing and challenges other people to do the same, even if the conversation is uncomfortable. It is decent, honest, moral, honourable, virtuous, and full of integrity. Good people don't just do the right thing, they make things right. Faithfulness is being dependable in our relationship with God and others. It's choosing to be true to our word and following through with our promises. Faithfulness possesses a consistency, devotedness, fidelity, and steadfastness in all its interactions. It's being reliable in a world that isn't. Faithful people are not disloyal, nor are they flippant with their commitments. Gentleness is allowing God to deal with others so that we don't have to take matters into our own hands. Another challenge. It's been said that gentleness is the grace of the soul. Gentleness includes being calm, serene, and tranquil. Being gentle doesn't mean someone is weak, quite the opposite. It takes the strength to be gentle when the flesh wants the opposite. Gentle people are not harsh, nor are they calloused. Self-control is being able to keep oneself in check. It's not letting our circumstances cause us to lose control. Self-control exhibits moderation, temperance, and discipline. It's choosing, under significant pressure, to chase the important instead of the urgent. Self-controlled people show restraint and are not impulsive. Well, that's a whole series of challenges, isn't it? This is a lot. It seems so difficult, but it's so important. And I think it's important to remember that it's not, I need to work on this, I need to work on this, I need to work on this. It's actually, I need to work on my relationship with God. I need to get the Holy Spirit in me, because you can't do all these things on your own. And if you do, it doesn't mean anything. You need to do this with God. In John chapter 15, verse 5, he says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So this whole concept in the Bible is really regularly explained using a vine and branches. So if you imagine God is the vine and we're one of the branches that come off, if the Holy Spirit is flowing from God to us with the water and the nutrients and all of the things that a vine needs to grow, then there will be grapes, there will be fruit. But if there's nothing coming through the branch, if the branch is cut off from the vine, there's not going to be any fruit and we're going to be thrown in the fire. Yep, mini. Yep. And back in the book of Matthew chapter 7, which is, this passage is just before the first one we read from Matthew. Jesus explains that people are identified by their fruit. You can't pick an apple off a thorn bush. So every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Every good tree bears good fruit. And that is what we are here and aiming to be, is a good tree bearing good fruit for our God. So Anakin had those gifts. He had the potential to be the ultimate, but he went for the ultimate power instead. And he ended up in a very bad place. If I actually was procrastinating writing up my notes last night, shortening them so I wasn't reading big long phrases, and I was on Pinterest looking at Star Wars things. And and sending them to David and making him laugh and showing Brad and getting my phone taken off me. And there was a couple of little, comic strips that were like, what would happen if Anakin didn't go to the dark side? And there was a picture of Padme and Anakin and the twins, because they had two kids, Luke and Leia, and they were snuggled up on the couch. And, there was another one where Anakin had to take the rubbish out. But it was just these beautiful family things that wouldn't have been possible, that weren't possible because of the path they took. In the end, Padme died during childbirth. Sorry, not Padme died during childbirth. And so Luke and Leia didn't have mothers. They were sent to opposite ends of the galaxy so that their father would never know that they existed, because he was so evil that they hid his children from him. And the two kids didn't even know they were twins, and that's a whole other story. So if he was exhibiting the fruit, he would have been looking for peace and self-control and gentleness and kindness, and he would have ended up sitting on the council next to Yoda, and Star Wars probably wouldn't have been very exciting. But what can we do to ensure that we are producing fruit, to ensure that we don't end up on that dark path? One of the things I recommend you do is jump on the YouVersion Bible app and do the Fruit of the Spirit plan, because this has been a very short, so far 15 minutes maybe, no, 20 minutes, I don't know. However long that timer is minus 5 minutes. And we could preach for 6 months on the fruit of the Spirit and still not exhaust what we have to say. I have had so much trouble putting this together because I want to include everything, and we had to keep pulling it out. And check it out. There's some great passages. If you want to know, what verses I've looked at too, the recording will be up, or come and ask me. Yeah, definitely. It's so good. And then next step I would say is join a connect group. Be around people who know God, who want to know God, who are hungry to know more about God. Make these relationships, these connections, and you might help them too. And together you turn into this big grapevine. Next, I would like you to get an accountability partner or a discipleship partner, or if you already have one, to actually meet with them. So this is a person who is the same gender as you, because that's how we deal with issues properly, talking, man to man or woman to woman, who you can tell your struggles, who you can give your prayer points to, who can say, so Jacqui, you said you wanted to do your devotional this week. How's that going? I go, yep, next question. Oh no, back to that question. How are we going to make this better this week? Hold you accountable for what you choose to do. Because as you build each other up, strengthen each other, God will strengthen both of you, and you will bear fruit. And you would think, this is a bit self-serving, but it's not. This is real. Volunteer in church. This is such a journey for your heart. You go from the initial stages, not always, but often, I don't want to do this, I have to do this is so much work. They're asking so much of me, I don't want to come early, I don't want to stay late, this is so inconvenient. And then God does a work in your heart. And all of a sudden it's 2:00 in the afternoon and the Holders are still here. And loving it, because God's done a work in us, and serving in church is how you get patient. It's how you get self-control. It's how you make sure your spirit is gentle. You can serve anywhere, from the front to the kids in the kitchen. There is a place for everyone. This is God's house, and He made it for everyone. So I know that sounds like an agenda, those 4 items. I know I harp on about these things, but they are legitimately 4 of the best things that you can do to make sure your heart is connected to God's heart and that you are bearing fruit. Could you imagine this fruity church? There was just fruit going everywhere. How amazing that would be. Jonosh. Sorry. Our home, this church, our home, overflowing with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. You wouldn't even recognize the place. We are all on a journey, and everyone's at a different stage. But how great is it the closer we get to God, the more like Jesus we become. Imagine people noticing that there's something different about you in a good way. Why is he smiling all the time? I want to smile like that. Oh my gosh, her world is going up the pipe and she's sitting there with a smile on her face. What's going on? How is he so content in all this chaos? I want to know more about that. I want to be like them. Could you imagine those people finding God and this room overflowing? Could you imagine getting to heaven and meeting hundreds of people who know God because of your fruit? Thank you so much. Because you smiled at me that day, I'm in heaven. Because you were patient with me that day, I'm here and I know Jesus. I can't express how incredible that would be and how incredible that will be. And I just want to say that it's never too late to start. In the 6th movie, episode 6, Darth Vader meets his son Luke and they have a moment and Darth Vader makes a choice and off comes his helmet, which will kill him. He can't breathe. But he chooses to save his son from the Sith Lord rather than continuing under the Sith Lord's orders. He came home to the Jedi. He came home to his family on his last day. It's never too late to start. All right. Would you like the band or would you like to come up? I'll hand you over to the band. Thank you all.